And for more on that, let's turn to our correspondent Nina Potts in Washington, D.C. to talk about the possibility of war in Syria. Well, Nina, we know that the White House is still consulting with its allies and on Congress over launching strikes against Syria. Well, the memory of the war in Iraq is still fresh in many people's mind. So when the UN inspector is still carrying out their work in Syria, what do these consultations mean, and will it change any decisions made by the administration?
Well, the White House says that President Obama is in very close contact with British Prime Minister David Cameron, with France, with Australia, with Canada. The White House also pointing to the statement from the Arab League, describing that as very forceful, pointing to Turkey as a member of NATO, saying that NATO is severely impacted by chemical weapons attacks and developments in Syria. So the White House is really pointing to a small international coalition outside the UN, which we know for the moment is roadblocked, despite David Cameron's efforts to get a resolution passed at the United Nations. As far as Congress is concerned, Congress is out. Now, there have been some calls on President Obama to put a motion for military action to a vote, much like David Cameron is attempting to do in terms of recalling Parliament. Questions were asked yesterday at the White House. Does Obama intend to recall Congress? White House very, very careful to say that the U.S. is a different country, and that the U.S. does not require any more legal justification to act, since the use of chemical weapons is crossing a red line. My sense is that the White House is waiting to declassify information it has. Sources say that U.S. intelligence analysts have samples from the site of the chemical weapons attack. So my sense is that the U.S. is looking to act outside the UN.
Well, as far as we know, all options are on the table. They are probably be carrying out limited military attacks. So what do you know about the nature of potential strikes?
Well, in terms of the timeline, the White House has said that a strike could happen, or a decision at least, on the course of action could come within a week. Analysts are pointing to as early as the weekend, possibly Thursday night, possibly Friday. The nature of the attacks, the assumption is that they'll be in the form of cruise missiles launched from destroyers in the eastern Mediterranean, possibly bombers. At the moment, most analysts agree that the use of special forces is highly unlikely, but I think it's important to point out that the White House is saying this is not about regime change. This is not about a long-term strategic goal of supporting the rebels against President Assad. This is about punishing President Assad for the use of chemical weapons, crossing that red line that we know that President Obama had established. But the American public has no appetite for a war, and certainly we're hearing from the right and left criticism of President Obama, calls for the U.S. not to intervene. Ted Cruz, who is seen as a Republican presidential contender, a likely presidential contender, has said that it would be absolutely wrong for the U.S. to get involved in any sort of military action. So the White House has been very careful. This is a targeted attack in direct retaliation for the August 21st attack, and this is not a long-term effort with a strategic goal of ousting President Assad.
Well, still, it's going to be a very big decision for President Obama and will change the lives of many. Thank you, Nina, for your reporting from Washington, D.C. Meanwhile,